Thank you. That the first book of Tanya and Shaar Hayichud Vehaemunah and Iyar Tshuva, this was printed by the Alter Rebbe himself. And the fourth part and the fifth part, these are letters and different things written by the Alter Rebbe that was added by the Mittul Rebbe. But obviously, the Mittul Rebbe made the decision that not only is publishing it, but adding it and making it part of Tanya. So that means that it's all one book of Tanya. There's another thing about this is that the Alter Rebbe, when he wrote the Tanya, was questioning whether this, what we're going to learn now, should be volume 1, and the first part of Tanya should be volume 2, or it should be the other way around. At the end, Alter Rebbe decided that the first 53 chapters will be the beginning, and this will be the second volume. But it's interesting that the Alter Rebbe hinted in Tanya itself that he had a plan that this would be the first volume of Tanya. Where did he hint it? There's certain things which Alter Rebbe writes later, and he says, I'm going to explain it in the future. And where is it? It's in the chapters of Tanya, which are in the beginning. It means Alter Rebbe wanted it should be documented that there was a plan that this would be volume 1 and that would be volume 2. It's also interesting to note when people ask the Rebbe, when they teach Tanya, where should they start from? Some people got an answer to start from the second volume of Tanya. The general difference between the two is the first volume of Tanya is focused more on the Avodah, on how the Nefesh Elokis and Nefesh Bahamis have this confrontation with each other, and how Nefesh Elokis to overcome the Nefesh Bahamis, and how you can live like a baby when you're davening and you're learning and you're Yitzhahara. The second volume of Tanya, what we're going to learn now, is all about understanding true emunah in Hashem. What does it mean that Hashem is one? As we'll soon see. So, just like the first part of Tanya opens up with the cover page, where the Alter Rebbe says the whole Tanya is based on a pasuk. It's very close to you, and the Alter Rebbe asks, how is it close to you? And that's the purpose of Tanya, to explain how it's close to you. And the Alter Rebbe explains it's through his bonus, because the mind is the key to the heart, that if I think about the greatness of Hashem, it's very easy through that to develop love and fear of Hashem. This one, second part, is also based on a pasuk. So let's start with page 17. What's before page 17? We're not going to learn it, but it has its own name. It's called Chinuch Katan. That part, which is before page 17, is sort of an introduction to this part. Good morning. Three is a crowd, okay. But I'm already drinking one, so I'm going to Lahabin ma'at miz'er, to understand a little bit, Mashikosa, that which is written, the Zohar. What does it say in the Zohar? Shema Yisrael, that the first pasuk is Shema Yisrael, who Yichud Ilah, is a higher level of unity. Baruch Shem Kaved Malchus Leilam Vayet. The second pasuk is Yichud Atah, a lower level of unity. In other words, as we know, that there are, generally speaking, two commands when it comes to belief in Hashem. One is the existence of Hashem. Hashem is creator of the universe. Hashem runs the world, and the belief that everything is from Hashem. The second thing is to believe in the Achdus of Hashem. Hashem is one, which means that Hashem and the world are really one. The world is not separate. or independent from Hashem. So that belief is in Shema Yisrael. The belief that Hashem is there and He created heaven and earth and He took us out of Mitzrayim. That's the first commandment in Asar Sadirbis. I am God, your God, that took you out of Egypt, which means that we're supposed to serve Hashem. But the mitzvah that we're supposed to believe in the oneness of Hashem, that's in the pasuk Shema Yisrael. So we learned about this in a Maimer this year as well. But in Shema Yisrael itself, there are two psukim. The first one is Shema Yisrael, second one is Baruch Shem. So the difference is the first pasuk is expressing a higher level of unity, and the second pasuk is expressing a lower level of unity. The only problem is on the surface, if you look at the second pasuk, where does it even talk about unity? It says Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusay, let Hashem's name, His glory, His honor, and of His royalty should be in the world forever. But it doesn't say anything about unity. The first pasuk is Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, Hashem is one. So the Zohar writes that the word Va'ed, the last word, Va'ed, and the word Echad are the same word, but in Va'ed it's written in a code. So I want to explain that. As you know, that's what the world of Gematria is all about. But Gematria is not only numbers, there's also other ways that letters and words of Torah exchange with one another. So that we use. So Echad is spelled Aleph, Tes, Dalet, and Vod is spelled Vav, Ayin, Dalet. The Zohar writes that this is in hidden code the same as Echad. How is that? So it's based on other principles. One of the principles of exchanging letters is that well, let's first start with the easy one. Daled and Daled. This is the Daled, this is the Daled. 30 differences, and if you look at this Daled in the Chumash, it's a big Daled. Not the regular size, but it's still a Daled. Ches and Ayin, how do they exchange? Because we know that the letters come from the 5 different parts of the mouth. So there's another general principle that all letters that come from the same part of the mouth exchange with each other. So the Ayin comes from the throat. Not the way we pronounce Ayin, but the real way to pronounce Ayin is the way the Sephardic Jews pronounce it, where it comes from the throat. And Ches comes from the throat, so these two can exchange. What about the Aleph and the Vav? How do they exchange? There's another principle that there are 4 letters in Hebrew that are silent letters. Aleph, Hey, Vav, and Yud. All of the letters have substance to it, and when you pronounce a word, you'll be pronouncing that letter. The only 4 letters that could be not pronounced is Aleph, Vav, Yud, and Hey. So therefore, the Aleph and the Vav exchange. So the Aleph becomes a Vav, the Ches becomes an Ayin, the Daled becomes a Daled, and Echad is really Vod. You don't see it?
But you could just mix and match the rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we once had this discussion, but let me explain it for the rest of the class. What Ariel is really asking is, so how come sometimes you say that it's the same because it's the same number? Sometimes you say, oh, they're the same because they're from the same group. Here we have 3 different reasons why they're all the same. So everyone said that there's a famous Kabbalist who someone he has a book of responsive questions and answers, and someone asked him this question, and his answer was that what does it mean when there are 2 when there are two words that are the same. It doesn't mean that's, oh, because the gematria is the same, therefore there must be something similar. It's the other way around. Because they're similar, because they are similar in content, therefore we can notice something even external that's similar. Either is the number amount or something else about it which is similar. So therefore, depending on the similarity, in what way they're similar, that will determine what kind of sort of system is used, or what would it be, how would it manifest that they look similar. In some cases, is the fact that the number is exactly the same. In some places, it's the acronym, not the number, just the first letter. In some cases, it's the last letter in one word that has the same. If you remember, I told you the story last week about the person who came to the Ramban and he wanted to know where does it have his pasuk, and he showed him a pasuk where every three letters was his name. His name was Avner. So the first word, the third letter was Aleph. The next word, the third letter was Beis. The next word, the first letter was Nun. Why the third letter? So I guess what we're saying is it has to do with the person, the situation, and depending on all those details, that's how the similarity and the resemblance will express itself. So maybe this is a silly mashal, but I think it's just a little bit of way of getting to understand that if you see two people and you look at them and they look identical. So when just this week this happened, right before Shabbos, I have a granddaughter who was in Eretz Yisrael, and she went to somebody's house for Shabbos, and she looked at her and said, "Are you Mrs. Majeski's granddaughter?" She hadn't seen my wife in 60 years, she said, but she remembers her from this age. So, are you her granddaughter? She saw a resemblance. So you see two people that they look alike. What do you assume if you see that they look alike? Either it's depending on the age, either it's two sisters or they're cousins, must be something there, right? What if you see two people working in a store, they don't look alike, but they're wearing the same uniform? What would you assume? Also that they're sisters? Why not? Because just because they're both wearing the same color apron doesn't mean that they're sisters. But it does mean they probably both work in this store. In other words, here the connection is an external connection. So therefore, you'll also see the similarity on something external in just what they're wearing. Here, the connection is a deeper connection. So you'll see a similarity in the way they actually look. Same thing with all the gematrias and all the connections. Anytime you see that two words are the same for one reason or another, the specific method that we can see in which way they're the same is actually a result of the deeper connection that they have between each other. And it's very deep and it's very, complicated. So therefore, we don't always understand it. Sometimes there are situations where we can see it. In this case, in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe can explain. Very simple. The word echad represents a higher level of unity. And that's why the word unity comes out in the open. Echad. The word vaed is also unity, but it's hidden. And therefore the concept of unity in the word vaed is not open. It's a lower level of unity.
What does avod mean?
Forever. Okay. Yeah.
Isn't ayin considered one of the letters that doesn't get said? Or no, it's not included.
Doesn't get what?
Said like the aleph and the vav and the yud. Or it's just those.
No, the true ayin is pronounced like a ches. It's from the throat, right?
The other word.
So the question here is, how can there be two levels of unity? Either it's one or it's not one. a higher level of unity. If two people are connected, then they're connected. They're not connected, they're not. So obviously, we have to find an explanation how we can say that the high level of unity is emes, and the lower level of unity is also emes, and yet they're both true, and yet one is higher and one is lower. How can we explain that? So now the Alter Rebbe starts with first explaining the whole idea of unity. This is like the theme of all my Maimorim. In fact, there's a line in the Zohar where it says, this is the essence of the whole Torah, understanding that Hashem and the world is one. That's everything. All the rest are just details and commentary. So this is, in Chassidus, this is sort of the source. All the Maimarim from all the Rabbeim and all the generations, and Alter Rebbe himself from all the Rabbeim, it draws all from this part of Tanya. And it starts with the pasuk. So we know with this pasuk from davening, it's in Aleinu, but it's a pasuk in the Torah in Chumash Dvarim. And you should know today, and not just know, but you should take it to your heart. What should you know, and what should you take to your heart? Ki Hashem hu Elokim, that God is Elokim, He's God. B'shamayim imal, in the heavens above, and on the earth below, there is no other than Hashem. We need to understand, would it even enter your mind that there's another God that He's soaking in the water under the earth? Where does that come from? Because there's a pasuk in Chumash where it says that Hashem is besides this pasuk, He's the one above, and He's the one here on earth, and He's the one in the earth and in the water. So Alter Rebbe is saying, it's almost like he's saying this in a way of laughing, like, what do we need the Torah to tell this? Why does the Torah have to caution us and say, take this to your heart? And you should realize that it's very simple, that Hashem is the creator of the universe. And why is there so much words in Torah cautioning us? Don't even think that it's even amongst the fish down in the water. It's also, Hashem is all one everywhere. In Eksiv, it's written, La'olam Hashem Dvar Chanita B'Shamayim. There's a pasuk in Tillim. This is from the famous chapter of Tillim, Kuf Yutes 119. That every pasuk begins with another letter of the Aleph Beis. But each letter of the Aleph Beis is repeated 8 times. In other words, for the Aleph, there are 8 psukim. For the Beis, 8 psukim. And this is a pasuk that begins with Lamed, La'olam. And it says, forever, Hashem, your word stands in the heavens. Peter Shabbat Shem Tov is a Chrein Levracha, and the Baal Shem Tov explained that to me. What does it mean your words are in the heavens? Dvarcha Shamarta, those words that you said at the beginning of creation. Hashem said, Yehira Ki B'Sech HaMayim, let there be the firmament in the midst of the water, which means the heaven should come into existence. So these Tevis v'Osius Elo, these letters and these words with which Hashem created the heaven, they're always there in the Shemayim. One of the traditional traditional meaning that everyone who teaches Tanya always brings this in, is that this commentary, that when it says your words are always in the heaven, it means the words with which Hashem created the world, actually is found in the Medrash. There's a Medrash called Medrash Tillim. The Medrash goes by different parts of Torah. So there's Medrash Rabbah Breshis, Medrash Rabbah Shmois, Medrash Rabbah Vayikra, and there's a Medrash called Medrash Tillim. So if you look at this pasuk of Tillim, and you look at the Medrash, what it has to say about this pasuk, it says exactly this, that Hashem's words are always in the Shemayim. So why does it say here that this is from the Baal Shem Tov? The answer that was given, it says that the Tzemach Tzedek said that he asked his grandfather this question, and the Rabbi Marash asked the Tzemach Tzedek the question, And he said to him that it's similar to what Rashi did. Rashi, in the first words of his commentary, starts off, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak said so and so. So the reason why Rashi starts with that, because Rashi's father's name was Yitzchak. If you know Rashi's full name is Reb Shlomo Yitzchaki, which means Reb Shlomo, the son of Yitzchak. So he wanted to honor his father and put his name at the beginning of his commentary. So he brought something in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak. So too, the Alter Rebbe wanted to bring something in the beginning of Tanya from the Baal Shem Tov, because the Tanya is based on the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, and that's the Alter Rebbe's Rebbe. So therefore, he brought it from the Baal Shem Tov. And the Rebbe asks, it's very nice, but if it's not the Baal Shem Tov's commentary, it's not his insight, if it's from the Medrash, it's like not true that you're saying the Baal Shem Tov says this. The Medrash says, not the Baal Shem Tov. So the answer the Rebbe gave is we find this similar in other places. In fact, one of them is in Pirkei Avos. I'm not sure which parak it is, but in one of the chapters of Pirkei Avos, it says that one of the sages said, "B'nefel eivecha, when your enemy falls, al tismach, don't be happy. Don't rejoice when you see your enemy falling." And he goes on to explain why not. And there too, Mepharshim asks, these words, "Don't be happy when your enemy falls," is a pasuk. And here he brings it in the name of one of the sages. So the answer is, it's true that it's a pasuk, but this sage would repeat this very often, and he publicized this. And therefore, he's saying, when he says that this sage is saying it, it meant to say this sage publicized this idea in Torah. Same with the Baal Shem Tov. These words, that Hashem's words are in the heaven all the time, is yes, it's from the Medrash. But the Baal Shem Tov was the one who publicized it. In fact, in Hebrew, Pirish can also means to spread out. He's the one who spread out this insight that the words of the creation stand in the heaven all the time. And they're invested and clothed in all the heavens, all seven heavens, la'olam, forever, la'chiyesam, to give them life and to sustain them. Kediksiv, as it's written, another pasuk where it says, "Udvar Elokeinu," the words of our God, Yokum Loilam, they stand forever. Udvar Chayim v'Kayamim La'ad, and His words are alive and they stand firm also forever. So, which words are we talking about? These are the words in the heavens, which with these words Hashem created the heaven. Let's turn the page. And the reason is, those words would move away, would be removed from the heavens even for 1 second. Chas v'shalom, they would go back to their source, which is Hashem Himself. Then all the heavens would become ayim v'epes, would become absolutely nothing. Sometimes you have something and then you get rid of it, but there's a trace left that it used to be there. You write something on a piece of paper, then you take an eraser and you erase it. So there's a trace left that there was paper there. You have an object and you burn it, so there are ashes left. And most of the things are that way. Once it existed and you get rid of it, there's something there that's a trace that there was something there before. Over here, if Hashem would take His words away from the heavens, then everything would become nothing. It would be as if it never even existed in the first place. Just like it was before Hashem even said the words, "Let there be a firmament, let there be a heaven." So that means, and the famous, you probably heard this, one of the first things usually people hear about when they start learning the subject, is that a chassid once asked someone, if Hashem would want to get rid of the world, what would He do? How do you think He would do it? He wants to get rid of the world in a second. So the answer was, He'll make a fire, a huge fire, and in 1 second the whole world will be destroyed. So he said, what is He going to do with the ashes? Hashem will bring an ocean of water, it'll flood it, and in 1 second all the ashes will be gone. So what is He going to do with the water? Hashem will make it so hot that all the water will turn into vapor. Well, what is he going to do with the vapor? Goes on and on like that. So he asked him, what do you say? What is Hashem going to do? He said he's actually going to do nothing. He doesn't have to do anything, just to stop recreating the world, and it wouldn't be there. He doesn't have to destroy it. He has to stop recreating. It's like asking if I have my face in the front of the mirror, what do I do to take it out of the mirror? You can make a hammer and break the mirror. You can cover the mirror with paper. You can do this, you can do that, but all you have to do is just move away. The second you move away, it's gone. And by the way, with the mirror, it's also the same thing. When I move away from the mirror, go back and try to look for a trace. I mean, I can't go back because then my face will be there again. Someone else should go back and look at the mirror and see if there's any trace. I was there for an hour, so there should be some trace on the mirror that I was in. No, there's no trace, nothing. Because to begin with, there was nothing there. It was just a reflection of me. And therefore, once I'm removed, there's nothing left. The whole world is just a reflection of Hashem. It doesn't have any independent existence of its own. And therefore, once Hashem removes his light, there's no world and there's nothing left of the world.
That was the best mashal I've ever heard in my entire life.
So next time you stand in front of the mirror, you'll be thinking about how Hashem is one. Yeah. Then you'll forget what you need to do. The same with all the creation. Actually, in the Medrash only talks about the heavens. What about everything else? What about the earth? What about all the creations of the earth? So it says the same applies to that. All creation in all the world, Elyonim v'Taftenim, the higher and the lower. Even in the most physical world, and in the physical world itself, even daimim, the same principle applies. In other words, when you look at physical things, like a daimim, inanimate, there's not even any sign of any kind of life. And here we're saying that's only existing because Hashem's energy is in it. So that's what we're saying. Yes, even daimon, things that we see absolutely no sign of life, it does have life in it. The life is the energy of Hashem that's sustaining it. And without that, it wouldn't even exist for a second. One of the questions people ask is, so what does the Torah give the message about the heavens? Torah should have given the message about things that are on Hashem's words are in the stones and the mountains and the rocks and why dafka heaven? So one of the ways that it's explained is that I would think that maybe the heaven, because it's so high and more spiritual, it doesn't need Hashem's life and energy to be there all the time. Physical things, they're dead. They don't have their own life. So of course they need Hashem's energy in it all the time. But I would think maybe things that are more spiritual, the heavens or the spiritual worlds, they sort of do exist a little bit independently. So he says, no, not the physical, not the heavens, not the spiritual. Even in the highest worlds, it couldn't exist for a second without Hashem sustaining it. Elohim Mistalk is the same principle, that if Hashem's letters would be removed from it, Kerega, even for a moment, Chas v'Shalom, what would be removed? The oisius, the letters of Esar Maimoras, with the 10 utterances, Shebehem Nivras Haaretz B'Sheshes. And again, if you want to use that mashal of the mirror, the same, it would also be the explanation. 1 second, I mean, it's so fragile that if Hashem's words go away for a second, it can exist. That means that it's fragile, that it's weak. No, it means, and it shows us that it's only Hashem. There's nothing else there except for Hashem. And that's why even for 1 second, it couldn't exist without Hashem's light. So what would happen? It would go back to be nothing. And I'm not going to go into it, but in other places in Chassidus, it goes into the word ayin, the word epes. It all is different descriptions of nothingness. Absolute nothingness. The whole world would look like exactly like it was before the 6 days of creation. And this is the meaning of what the Arizal said. Shagam b'daimim mamish, even things that are daimim, even things that are inanimate, like a rock. Avonim, rocks, or earth, or mayim, or water. Yesh b'tchinas nefesh b'chayis ruchnis. They contain in it a soul and a spiritual presence. And what is it? Which there's no, animals have less life than a person, but there's life, there's activity there, there's something going on. And even plants, we say, plants also have, there's growth, there's movement. But daimim, there's no movement, there's nothing. But nevertheless, there is life in there. And these are the words of Hashem's speech, V'asar Maimoros, Hamachayis and Mahabas as Hadaimim. They give life to that which is daimim. And that causes the world to be in existence and not to go back to its nothingness as it was before 6 days of creation. So this is the general principle, which is considered one of the most fundamental principles of Chassidus, the idea that we shouldn't think Hashem created the world 5,786 years ago. And since then, the world now continues to stand. Hashem created it, and it just stand all this time. No, Hashem created the world then, and he consistently and constantly reads the universe. Every second, he shines his light. And if he would stop for 1 second, there wouldn't be a world. And this branches out into so many different things that we'll soon see that make the difference in what we believe about Hashem. Once we understand that Hashem is constantly creating the world, and the world can't exist even a second without his energy being transmitted to the creation, then we'll understand Hashgacha Pratis in a different way, and many other things in a whole different way. Now he says that there is the words of Hashem's utterances, 10 utterances with which he created the world. What are the 10 utterances? These are the words that we find in Chumash Bereshis. When it describes how Hashem created the world, it says he created heaven and earth, and it says this was the first day. Then he created this on the second day. Those words that we find in the Chumash, those are the 10 utterances. Now the Rebbe asks, but what's in the Chumash is very, very limited. The word Evan, the word stone, a rock, is not found anywhere in the 10 utterances. Nevertheless, there's a life force and a life flow that comes to this rock. Through different combinations and substitutions of the letters, just like we showed here now, that an ayin could come as a substitute for a ches, or a vav could be a substitute for a hey. That's how the whole Torah is written in codes. Like you look at the Torah and you see words there, but there's a hidden code there, and not one hidden code. There's infinite hidden codes. There's so many different things hidden there, and so many different words hidden there that try to think of it like this. How many things exist in the world? 1 million? No. I'm not talking about different things. I'm talking about different species of animals, of worms, of fish, of flowers, of things that grow, people. Everything is in the Asara Maimoros, the 10 utterances. And yet, in those words, it's all very limited. How many stars are there? How many things are there in up there between the stars and the constellations and the moon and all the different things that are in orbit? Trillions. And it's all included in Asara Maimoros. So the answer is because in these words, there are hidden words and through hidden codes. And when Hashem pronounced the 10, it included all those things which are hidden in these words. Hamazgalgalos, and they're transposed, which means that they switch from one word to another word, Berej Lamed Aleph Shorim, through 231 gates, Panim V'achar, either direct or reverse, but this is explained in Sefer Yetzirah. And after the words are exchanged, which means one word exchanges to another word, and that word exchanges to a third word, and the third word becomes a fourth word, and a fifth, and a sixth. And eventually it becomes the word Aleph Beis Nun, which means a rock. And those letters give chayus to the rock. What does it mean by 231 gates? Generally speaking, on the bottom you'll see there's a footnote number 9, where it says there are 22 letters of the Aleph base. So this is talking about, imagine you would have just a word made up of 2 letters. So altogether you would have 231. What does that mean? It means that you can write, again, you think of a word like that we can understand in our language. Let's say Av means a father. Aleph base is Av. So we have an Aleph, we have a base. So with this Aleph, you can also write another 21 letters, because you can have Aleph Gimel, Aleph Dalet, Aleph Hey, Aleph Vav, Aleph Zayin, all the way till Aleph Tov. Now, Aleph Gimel, as far as we know, doesn't mean anything. But as far as Hashem knows, Aleph Gimel also means something. And the reason is, because we'll see later in Tanya, not only a word, but each letter has meaning to it. The form of the letter, the shape of the letter, the going up, the going down, whichever way it is, that in itself represents a certain light of Hashem. And when the 2 letters together, it's like we say with a word, now it spells something. Sometimes there are words which we understand, and sometimes we don't. Like you look in the davening, let's say, Ana b'chayach. We don't understand those words. But those are names of Malachim, names of Hashem. Anyway, so this could be another 21. Aleph Beis, Aleph Gimel, Aleph Dalet, and so on. That's the Aleph. Now the same with the Beis. With Beis Aleph, it spells Ba. Then Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, be 21 more letters. So it's basically 21 times 22. 22 letters can be multiplied 21 times. What does that do? Take out your computers, calculators. 231. In other words, so when Hashem says those words which are in the Chumash, yes, we don't find the word Evan, but from there, the word Evan evolves from there. And those letters that ultimately evolve from the original letters, that is the Chayas. They are the letters that carry the energy that gives life to anything that's Evan. The same applies to everything in creation. That what? Hashemish Nikraim B'hem B'lashon HaKodesh, the name that's in Hebrew, in the holy language, which is Hashem's language. Hein Oisis Adibur, these are the words with which Hashem spoke. Hamashtalshlas, and they evolve. Mimadrege l'madrege, from one level to another level. But where do they evolve from? From the 10 utterances which are written in the Torah. And they evolve by the chilufim and tmuras, by one letter substituting another letter, or one letter being exchanged for another letter, the 231 gates, at Shemagias, Meslapshis, Baisa, Nivra, Nachyes, until it finally descends so low that it could go into that specific individual creation to give it life. So he's going to explain why is it necessary. Why couldn't Hashem just say, let there be heaven, let there be earth, let there be rocks, let there be trees, let there be this kind of tree, let there be that kind of tree. And Hashem is Hashem, so he could manage to say it all in a few seconds. It's not a big deal. In other words, the answer is not because it's too much to speak. Hashem could do it all in 1 second. So there's a reason why it follows this pattern, and that's what he's going to explain in the next piece, which we'll do tomorrow in Hashem. Okay. To be continued. Just not to be disappointed at the end, we're not going to be learning all 12 chapters. It gets much more complicated as we go along, but we're going to do probably 5 or 6 chapters, and that's going to be very fundamental for a lot of young Chassidus. Okay.
Thank you.
No, I don't know.
So confused until just now. I was being serious. Nothing serious. No, I was it.
That's funny.
You missed
What? Like, here's sort of like, if you're like, push it off. Yeah. It was.
Then.
Oh, I totally.
I thought you were. Fine, you can make From writing. I saw the problem. Lost my lip gloss.
I think it's like. I think it was like the defense.
Yeah, I mean.
I mean.